Mr. Rationality Rules. How you doing? I had to reset my whole computer since the last video I made, so hopefully you can hear me and see me and this works. All my videos I do off the cuff, no script, and I have to do them live to give me that pressure to continue to say something and not overthink things. So anyways, let's get to the point. I've been watching your videos. I'm a fan, etc., similar mindset. Um, this whole trans issue being an issue and your courage to make a video about it anyways, despite the toxic lack of dialogue culture, is fantastic. Your insight is appreciated. It's a voice that needs to be heard. You are one of the like I could literally count on my hands how many people are able to balance the nuance of this topic properly and to bridge the gap somewhat between those on one side of the fence and those on the other. It really, on a personal seeker of truth philosophical level, just enrages me that people can, take offense and use that as a justification to shut down a conversation. The only time that is appropriate is when there's an actual credible threat of physical force. And, that is apparently what people feel. I don't live in Texas like Aaron Ra does. And, he, on his post, he explained that the trans people he knows are actually in danger. And there's an actual, by speaking from an ignorant perspective, you're encouraging that threat to thrive. I don't know. Even that seems a bit of a stretch. From when I was born to basically, my early 20s, I was totally a homophobic bigot, especially transphobic. I mean, proudly. Like, that was the team I was on. And the only reason why I was able to, break free of my ignorance was, instead of people shutting me down or getting offended, which actually just encouraged me, because I love offending people, especially if they're wrong. And usually if someone's offended, it's an indication that they're just wrong. And so I just like to stoke that fire. But if somebody calmly and rationally explained how I was just simply incorrect, or that I'm missing a point of view, or that my view is the least nuanced and least helpful and correct view, man, I'd be shamed into being correct. Maybe that's just me, but the whole problem is that presumption, and it's hard for me to navigate the world of dialogue when I'm always assuming when I'm dialoguing with someone, I wouldn't even waste my time unless, they're trying to seek the truth. And I loved your dialogue with the anarcho-capitalist, and I am an anarcho-capitalist, but I'm not as crazy as this motherfucker. What's his name? And I should have at least remember his name, because he's one of the principal people that enlightened me to that perspective. He's the bald guy with the cult who's a moron, and he got a master's in philosophy and thinks he's the shit, and has universal preferable behavior, which totally falls apart on the first premise that you just demolished him on. So that was great. Anyway, in that exchange, you explained that even though you doubted his sincerity, you were still carrying on the dialogue for the onlookers. And, I know my brother's significant other is trans, and he's a great guy. Nothing against him, zero. And, but even as recently as 2016, when I first met him, To me, I did not understand the concept of the sex and gender divide. I didn't see the validity in it. I didn't see the authority that came from the subjective experience aspect of it. And so it was so awkward. I was basically stunned into silence because he's a super nice guy. I didn't want to offend him, but my thoughts were nothing but the things that would offend him. I'm like, you're born female, you're female, no matter what you feel. Like, that doesn't change objective reality. And all it would take is, people being comfortable enough to say that out loud, and for the next person, instead of getting offended or to feel like they're being harassed or feel like they're being abused, which is literally what that professor who was talking with Jordan Peterson was saying, that misgendering is abuse. That word is abused. People say abuse for things that do not fall in that traumatic category whatsoever. And so anyway, the same thing with me coming around to not being a homophobe. Like, just, there is even a scientific precedent for gender dysphoria. Like, and, back when I was homophobic, I would say, well, if you're going to screw those of the same gender, well, what's stopping you from crossing this line or that line and going, bestiality or pedophilia and blah, blah, blah. But, to have the data and the facts and science report that, same-sex attraction occurs among multiple species, and it's always a certain percentage of the population, and they have a evolutionary benefit to society. And how, one thing that did hang me up all the time was I couldn't think my way out of it as being a disorder, both for trans and for being gay. Because in my head, I'm defining order as straight. So it was just axiomatic. And it was my wife that introduced me to the concept of, if it's not inhibiting your ability to function in the world, well, it's not really a disorder. And, that comparison of being left-handed or right-handed, being left-handed, if you define being right-handed as ordered, then being left-handed is disordered. But once you realize that people can function in nature just as well, whether they're left-handed, right-handed, and it's our society that's, right-handed bias, and that's where the struggle comes from. Everything aligns. Bill Nye did a good episode on it. He seemed very dispassionately explaining, what things were spectrums, what things weren't, how biology isn't binary and exact. Your sexual features displayed differently, and sexual preferences expressed differently. And one big problem is it got wrapped up in the whole identity politics, and I'm part of this group and I'm a marginalized group. That makes me a victim. That makes me special. That makes me entitled. I want my shit. I want to join this flag and this tribe so that I can claim the benefits thereof, and have an enemy to fight against. There's all that subtext behind all of this going on, the whole Richard Dawkins thing. And in the arena of dialogue, it should be take no prisoners. People say whatever the hell they want. I want Nazis to say they're Nazis, to feel comfortable proudly admitting that. Because if they do, instead of being closeted, they will hear, not fear, but hear why they're wrong. Like, if some dipshit kid thinks looking like a Nazi's cool, if you cancel them at one bad tweet, they're going to be like, holy shit, like, now I'm the persecuted one, and no one ever told me what the hell's wrong with being a Nazi. Whereas if you let them proudly and loudly speak it, everyone knows that he's wrong, and maybe a conversation can start. Like, why the hell do you think that? Didn't you know that Nazis are giant assholes that, killed 6 million Jews? And he can say, oh, it's the protocols of the elders of whatever. And then you say, no, that was a forgery. And look, this is where they copied it from. And it's a bunch of bullshit. Because people are going to believe and think that's the best chance they've got. If conversation won't change their mind, canceling them will definitely not, and it will make it worse. So what do you want? Do you want the Nazis to get worse and coalesce in the dark? Or do you want to bring them to the light? Do you want to expose them to the counterpoints? Expose them to the counterpoints. Do not fucking cancel them. And it's so fucking self-righteous. Like, oh, you're so perfect, and that I have the moral authority to, shut down a voice. It's a voice. It's not a call to violence. You have a right to defend people and defend yourself. And I don't give a shit what the platform is. It's a lame loser tactic to try to humiliate and shame somebody for their wrong position instead of just fucking explaining it to them. I don't know. I'm just so fucking over it. Like, the collective IQ of society goes down when there's less communication between the nodes. And it's stupid to be offended. I made a video to Michael Malice, and I was explaining how refreshing it is to listen to somebody that doesn't get offended and loves to offend people, because the whole offend game is bullshit. And that's really what that turns me off of almost any position. Like, that is the most shoot yourself in the foot strategy if you're of a particular opinion and you're trying to, explain that you're right or prove that you're right or show people how you're right. Being offended, you're dead. You're just dead to me, and loser, floating in the water. You and your opinion. And then that will have the effect of pushing in the total opposite direction. So I went vegan. Alex O'Connor helped with that, other YouTubers as well. And one thing that kept me from being vegan, looking at how prissy and pathetic those whiny, offended fucking vegans were. I didn't want to be that. Fucking lame. I think Penn and Teller did an episode, and they're like, if you're vegan, you're going to be offended by this and that. I'm like, aha, fucking vegans. Even James, or what's his name? The lead singer of Tool, which I do love Tool. I love all his music. And there's a picture of him putting bacon in his wine and just giving the middle finger. And I loved that from the perspective of fuck people that get offended over a little piece of food. Now I feel kind of differently about it, but I'm still not offended. I look them straight in the eye and be like, really? So fuck me and putting a tortured animal's remains in your food. And that's where you stand. Tell me more. Let's have a conversation. And he'll probably be like, life feeds on life, or whatever his justification is. And I'll be like, okay, there's a valid distinction between sentient and non-sentient life, and there's a valid distinction between humanely treated animals on a farm and factory farm tortured animals, and where are you putting your money? Do you support animal cruelty? Like, there's literally no reason to be offended. And I can't think of anything more offensive to do to a vegan. So anyways, I respect what you're doing. You're getting better all the time. You're speaking up when you're hesitating, and that's the time that makes it the most interesting, because people value your opinion. Make that risk. Be wrong. Make a video loudly and proudly. And if it's wrong, do your correction video. That's how the world should work. That's how everyone should be fucking doing this. And to give people the fucking benefit of the doubt and to not treat wrong opinions as threatening of your life when it's not. And I think I posted a comment on your video, like, Matt Dillahunty just needs to chill the fuck out. I don't know what his problem with is, why he's so quick to anger. And I have respect for him as a thinker, and he helped me see the pro-choice side of the pro-life, pro-choice argument so much better than anyone ever. Anyway, that's another video for another time. I feel like I don't know anyone that's investigated both sides of the pro-life, pro-choice issue more than me. So you could call that hubristic, but I've never seen it. People are still stuck on one side of the fence or the other with that as well. So I wrote a chapter on it. I made like a multi-chapter deconversion story. Maybe I'll post that as videos, and then I'll go over it, and then that will be out on the record. Logical fallacies. Oh, you have to see that Christian guy you're capturing Christianity. He made like a parody video of this guy who doesn't believe in Abraham Lincoln, and it was pretty funny. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that. I'm sure you're probably working on a video for it already, but it kind of made fun of you a little with your debunked game, which is a cool game. It's a cool concept. I kind of have to see it in action to really. I'm not a big board game kind of guy, but if any, I like chess is interesting. That's about as far as I go. Called board games for a reason. So anyway, gonna post this on your Twitter. Maybe I'll get some views. So I did for Michael Malice, got 120 views. Then I did Bishop Barron and Alex O'Connor, and each of those got like 12 views. So we'll see if you get 12 views or first. I think, I didn't put Cosmic Skeptic, and for this one, I'm only putting your name and not Irrationality Rules. So that might have something to do with it. I don't have any tags. Hey, I'm new to this YouTube shit. I am lower than low. I want to practice when no one's looking. And, I want to get comfortable with it before I can actually move forward and improve things. So, yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Be cool. Who knows? Maybe this will be the one video that goes to the person I'm sending it to, and they watch. But seemed like you got your hands full on lots of other cool projects and things. Yeah, that's all the interesting stuff I have to say. So I'm going to sign off. Thanks for listening to whoever stuck around, and peace out. Rock and roll.